to day 2 of our Exploring Flexibility and Mobility series. Day 2 is all about the hips. So we're going to be going through a little bit of a couple hip flexor stretches. We're going to be looking at internal and external rotation of the hips, something that often gets ignored. And then we're also just going to be doing a few mobility and flexibility exercises to get your hips really warmed up and moving through their full range of motion. So feel free to join us today. You just need your beautiful body. So we're going to just dive right on in with a hip flexor stretch. So it's kind of like, almost like a low kneeling posture. And we want to think about keeping our legs almost at a 90 degrees. And then really the key to this exercise is lengthening the tailbone down. So think about your tailbone, think about actively lengthening it. So putting the pelvis in a more neutral, almost posterior tilt to really get that stretch through the hip flexor. And so to do this stretch, you want to think about, you can kind of take your left hand, if your left knee is forward, and using it to kind of open up. So as you do that, open up and stretch over, laterally stretching towards the left side. So you're getting a nice like lateral stretch through the right side body, but then you'll feel it right in your hip flexor. So stretch, and then back down, stretch. Actively squeeze the glutes and lengthen the tailbone, and you should feel the stretch right here. And down, stretch. Maybe you even kind of sink forward just a bit. We're not trying to super lean forward here, but we are trying to lengthen, lengthen down, opening up the side body, pushing, lengthening, squeezing the glutes, and lengthening that tailbone down to really get that stretch. So bend over, lengthen. You should be feeling it right here. If you're not feeling it here, check. Are you squeezing your glutes? Are you lengthening the tailbone down? That is how you will get the results you want with this stretch. And then you can release. And then repeat that on the other side. So it's so important to really loosen up our hips because they are associated with, like we were talking about yesterday, everything's connected. So if you have tightness within your hips, that could be causing you knee pain. A lot of times people may have unnecessary knee surgeries because their hips are causing them knee pain, but they're not addressing their hip problems, so they just go straight into like surgery of the knee without addressing the underlying cause of that pain. So if we address all aspects and we really take everything into consideration, we can really be avoiding those types of scenarios. So yeah. Alright guys, the next exercise we're going to be doing is focusing on that internal and external rotation of the hips. So a lot of times we're walking, we're sitting, our hips are kind of moving back and forth, but they're not necessarily moving inward, getting the full rotation that they're capable of. And when you're not putting your joints through the full range of motion, you can lose that range of motion, and you can kind of become stiff over time. So we're going to be kind of looking at an exercise that can help assess how well our hips are able to internally and externally rotate, and then kind of stretch through those postures to further develop that rotation if needed. So one way to do this is to kind of bring your hips out bring your legs out just a little wider, knees bent, and you just want to let them drop to one side. So we're dropping, and right now I have my left leg down and my right leg this way. And so my left leg is externally rotated, and my top leg, my right leg is internally rotated. And so what I'm just kind of in a relaxed posture right now. What you notice is when you're in this relaxed posture, is your knee like super far off the mat? So if it is, in which case mine definitely is, that means I'm a little more restricted in the external rotation of my left hip. But I notice when I look at my right hip that it's like this whole leg is practically resting on the mat, which means I have really good internal rotation of my right hip. And so when we're doing this exercise, again, you want to make sure, for starters, that you're forming a 90-degree angle with this leg, a 90-degree angle with this leg, and then 90-degree angle between the legs. And so when we want to, because I have restricted external rotation in my left hip, one way I can address this is by kind of angling my torso this way and leading with my belly button to kind of lean forward into this hip. And so you kind of just want to lean forward, keep your spine nice and long, and lean until you can feel a stretch in your glute, in your left glute. And then all we're doing is simply holding here through this posture. So you'll notice your knee is starting to kind of come down towards the mat if it hasn't already. And we really just want to hold it here for the 2 minutes we talked about yesterday. And we're not trying to force any movement. We don't want this to be uncomfortable. We just want to help increase that rotation ability of our hip. And so again, just stretch until you can feel it in the glute. Breathe here. Maybe on your exhale, you kind of fold a little more into the posture. Sink a little bit deeper. Our legs are relaxed. We're not flexing our legs, and that's helping protect our knee joints. So if you feel any pain in your knee, back out of the posture, because that means we're not quite doing something right. So again, we're leading, we're kind of like lifting up and over to kind of lengthen, feel like you're lengthening your butt back and pulling your belly button up and over. And that should get that nice release and glute stretch to help sink into that external rotation. Okay, and then we can kind of sit back. And now we want to address the internal rotation of this leg. So you can kind of sit your weight back onto your sit bones. So notice how I'm kind of sitting my weight more into my booty. And then you kind of want to lean just slightly forward. You will notice that it might get a little tense right here. So that's our tensor fascia latae. And if you want, it's kind of like on the outside of the hip. You can even give that a nice little massage to really help open up that hip. So we're not doing anything crazy here. We're just sitting our way back, very passive about this. And we're just massaging this to kind of allow it to release a little more. Maybe you sit back and hold it, gentle pressure. And then we can switch sides. So then you bring your legs up, and then you drop them over. Again, checking on the 90-degree angle. And what I notice here is that all of a sudden, like, the external, my right leg is great. My knee is almost on the ground. But I notice my left leg has a little more restricted internal rotation because it's a little higher off the mat. So again, we want to address the external rotation of our right leg. We want to lean forward, lead with your abdomen, so kind of bringing your abdomen up and over and sinking forward, maybe tenting your fingers and sinking forward into the stretch until you feel it in your glute. Legs are relaxed, everything is relaxed. Spine is long, and you just rest into this stretch. And again, we want to hold it for about 2 minutes if you can. Just breathe through the stretch. And then when your 2 minutes is up, you can come sit your weight back down more. Ooh, maybe it's a little more tense here. Massage out that tense spot in your leg. Again, feet are relaxed, legs are relaxed. Gently massage out any tense areas right in your hip. You can find a little more release in this spot. So this is kind of a fun little self-assessment that you can use to determine your internal and external rotation ability of your hips, and then how to work on them. So, and then voila, that's it. Our last exercise for today will be a fun little tabletop exercise to kind of put your hips through that full range of motion and then challenge that end range of motion. Okay, so get into tabletop posture, which is a common yoga posture. We want to think about keeping our lower back from ducking too much or really just moving a lot during this posture, because that's what we're trying to avoid, but we still want to keep our abs engaged. So think about knitting our ribs, so engaging that core. And our wrists are under our shoulders, our knees are under our hips. We're going to start by activating our right leg. So bring that knee up, kind of tap it to the elbow, and then extend it back behind the body. Again, trying to keep from like dumping in your lower back. We want to keep that lower back still tucked, and then we're going to bring it out to the side. You may notice a little resistance from your hip here. At this point, we want to straighten out the leg, flexing the toes, and giving a pulse at the top, bending that knee in, and then bringing it up to tap the elbow once again. So let's try it the other way now. So bring it up to tap the elbow, bring it back, bring it out, keeping the lower back from dumping, straighten out that leg, flex those toes towards the shin, light pulse, bend, back and down, again, out, straighten, flex those toes, pulse, down, back down, back out, keeping those hips from raising too high, extend the leg, flex those toes, pulse, retreat, back and down. Do that about 10 times and then switch to the other side. You'll really feel the engagement, that external rotation of the hip, and then we're getting almost that hamstring stretch like we talked about yesterday when we're doing that full extension. You'll really feel it in the hip, and that's what we want. So this is our end range of motion. We do that light pulse. This is an active stretch, so that really engages the hips, and then we release back down, putting it through that full range of motion, and then back down. So feel free, like I said, do that about 10 times before switching to the other side. Thank you guys for joining me in day 2 of our Exploring Flexibility and Mobility series. I hoped this helped you kind of connect a little bit more with how your hips are moving and their potential range of motions, and the importance of moving them through their full range of motion to keep the hip joints happy and healthy. Please join me tomorrow for day 3 as we explore mobility of our shoulders and the connection between our shoulders and our upper back. So I can't wait for you guys to join me, and I will see you tomorrow.